Hi, I'm Kate.
And I'm Hank.
And we're from the Comp 110 team here at UNC.
And we're going to help you learn to program. Woo!
Yay! Hello everyone, welcome back to Learning About the Person class with Kate and Hank.
Hello.
So we're going to move on to making some more methods besides setters and getters, which aren't very exciting. But we love programming, so everything's exciting. Anyways, so we now have this person, and all we know about the person is the name, the age, the height, and whether they're studying or not. But we can do fun things with these attributes and these properties of the person. So one thing we can do is we can get their grade. So we're going to make a class, a method. And remember, a method, the method declaration starts with visibility. So we're going to make this public. Then you get the next part of a method declaration is return type. So public string, because we're going to make the grade a letter string, get grade. And we're getting something, so we're not going to put anything in these parameters, these parentheses here. So with this method, get grade, we want it to return a grade that someone gets based off of how much they study. So we want to do, if the person is studying, if studying is true, let's say they get an A. But if they're not studying, let's give them a C, because we should all study. So pause your video right now and try to use an if-else statement to do this, to say if the person is studying, they get an A, else they get a C. Okay, so your if-else statement should look a little bit like this. Take a minute, you can pause your video to check with what you thought it would be, and check it with this one. Okay, so one thing to note is you might have accidentally just used one equal sign here. Remember, we use two equal signs to check for equality, while we use one equal sign to assign values. So here, we are assigning is studying to be false. Therefore, false basically replaced this value, this variable here. But here, we're just saying, are they equal, like the normal equal sign in math. So what this program is going to do is we're going to see if is studying is true, then it'll return A. But as you can see, is studying is always going to be initialized as false. So is there any way we can change that and make it so that if someone studies, it actually can be turned to true?
I have an idea, Kate. Let's make a study method that
What?
makes someone study.
That's a great idea. Okay, let's all do what Hank says, because he's awesome, and let's make a method called study. So if this method is setting a value, should it have a return type? No, if we're setting a value, this is kind of like a setter, so it's going to be a void return type. So public void, remember, visibility, return type, and let's name this study, because we're going to basically say someone is studying if they call this method. So what this method does is it makes it so that if this method is called, if we say that person is studying, then is studying, that instance variable will now be of a true value. So now what we can do is throughout calling this program, we can decide whether or not the person is studying. So let's go ahead and use our method getGrade. This is fabulous. So we're going to do system.out.println Hank's grade is plus Hank dot get grade plus when he does not study. So let's go ahead and get that. Remember, our first line of system.out.println is going to also print. Okay, once again, I messed up with the spaces, but it says Hank's grade is a C when he does not study.
Oh no, I only got a C?
Yeah, you need to study.
I do need to study.
So Hank's grade was a C, but let's say Kate comes in, she's a good student, so she's going to get an A. So right now, I want you to pause the video and try and make a new instance of the person class named Kate. So go ahead and try and do that. Okay, so I don't know how well you based off of my voice, not only how tall I am, but my age, but you should get extra credit points if you got anywhere near this accuracy. So hopefully you had a general idea that this was where we instantiated and a new value, and then so we also instantiated here, and we made a new instance of Kate. Okay, so Kate's a good student, so we're going to say Kate.study, because remember, I was initialized as not studying, but I do study. So Kate.study. So what that did is that turned my, remember, we can go back to person. What it does when we called Kate.study is it turns is studying equal to true. Okay, so now that we've changed that instance variable of is studying to true for Kate, take a minute and pause your video to try and print out what my grade is now.
Did you get this?
Okay, so hopefully you got something along this line. The key item is that you called Kate.getGrade. So let's see what happens when we run this. So Hank's grade is a C when he does not study, but Kate's grade is an A because I'm all about that study life.
Oh, you beat me.
Oh, yeah, competition, friendly competition. Anyways, so basically my grade came out to A because remember, if we go to the get grade class, what it does is if is studying is true, it's going to go in between this bracket. So it's going to return A. Well, with Hank, is studying was false, so it doesn't go in here and it does else and it returns C. So we all know that while you're studying, oftentimes there's a bag of something to munch on next to you. So we're going to make a method that counts how many chips are left over while you're studying, or whether you study or not. So if you think about it, if you study, you're more likely to eat less chips if you're really studying. But if you're not studying, you're just going to be sitting there eating, and you're not going to actually be getting much studying done.
That's what I always do.
Yeah, so don't be Hank. That's why you got a C is basically because of chips. Let's all go Sue-Lays. Anyways, so this method, we want to return the number of leftover chips. So take a second and think about what should the return type be if it's a number of full chips. Okay, I hope you thought int. So we're going to make it int because it's going to be returning a number of chips. And let's go ahead and name this leftover chips. Okay. Now, the different thing about this method is that it's going to have local variables. So we talked about these variables at the top. These are called instance variables. So they can be accessed within all different types of methods, right? We can access them in the getGrade method, in the study method, but local variables can only be accessed in the method that they are in. And that's because we don't initialize them in the constructor here. So let's go ahead and make a starting number of chips. How many chips do you think are in a bag of Lay's, Hank?
Let's say 50.
Okay, that sounds about right. Int chips equals 50. So we're going to say at the start there are 50 chips in a bag. So now that we've said that we have this local variable called chips, which represents the number of chips in the bag, let's write an if-else statement for the rest of the method that will say if is studying is true, chips will decrease by, let's say, 10. However, if is studying is false and you're spending all of your time eating chips, chips will decrease by 40. So take a second to do that. Okay, so hopefully your if-else statement looks something like this. One thing that I'm suspecting might have happened is you might have forgotten to return something. So you need to remember if you have a return type, such as int, you need to return something of that type. So we return chips, which is an integer value. So we said chips equals chips minus 10 if you are studying. And another way you can write this is chips minus equals 10. So for the second part, we said if you're not studying, chips minus equals 40. So we're going to take this value of 50 chips and subtract 40 if you're not studying, but we're only going to subtract 10 if you are studying, and we're going to return that value named chips at the end. So just like you can set a local variable that's an integer, you could also make a local variable that's a message, such as string message equals. So with string, you could just do this and it'll print out an empty string. It's kind of the equivalent of saying int chips were to equal 0 at the start. So then let's say if you are studying, we're also going to return a string that says looking good. You're doing great things. Message equals looking good. And if you aren't studying, let's say the message equals get off the couch. So assign the string get off the couch to be our local variable. Go ahead and pause the video and try and do that. So that should look something like this. Message equals get off the couch. Little exclamation point for fun. So now we're making a message, but we're not doing anything with it. So what's a way that we normally show strings?
We normally system.out.print them, don't we?
Okay, yeah, then let's do that. And then what would we put in these parentheses here? Would we say get off the couch or looking good? We could do that, or we could just put in message, because we don't know which one we're going to print yet. We're going to call this on a specific instance, on a specific person, Kate or Hank, and depending on the person, we're going to print out looking good or get off the couch. Okay, now let's do something with our leftover chips method. So print out how many chips are left in Hank's bag of chips. Go ahead and pause the video and try this out. Okay, so it should look something like this. It doesn't matter exactly what words you did, just it's important that you're calling the instance of Hank and you're calling the method leftover chips on that instance. So let's see what happens, remembering that Hank does not study. So now that you've made this print statement, go ahead and guess how many chips do you think will be left over after Hank has eaten them. And you can do this, you can guess correctly by going back to the person class and think about what is the Boolean is studying set to for Hank, and what will happen depending on what that is in leftover chips once it's called on the instance Hank. Well, let's check and see. So it says here there are 10 chips left over. Let's see why that is. So we never called the study method on Hank. So Hank was initialized as studying being false. So with that being said, when you come into the leftover chips method, there's originally 50 chips, but then is studying is not true, so it's else, and chips is decreased by 40. And that is then printed as being only 10 chips left in the bag for Hank. So now, go ahead and write a print statement for Kate and how many leftover chips there are, and also guess how many chips that will be printed from calling it on Kate. Do this on paper once again, because remember, throughout the semester you will be asked to write code on paper. Did you get this? So here's what the print expression should look like. And you should have guessed that there would be 40 chips left in the bag. Because remember, when we call leftover chips, if you're studying, only the value of chips is only decreased by 10. So let's see if that actually is the case. Great, there are 40 chips left over. Awesome.
I ate more chips than you.
I love chips.
Thanks, Kate. Okay, so now that we have some methods, let's write another method to look at some different concepts. So, what's something else that a person might be able to do, Kate?
How about grow?
So, pause the video here and try and write a method that increases the person's height by 0.2 feet. So here's what our method looks like. Here we're able to use our underscore height instance variable because it is an instance variable. And the point of making this an instance variable is so we can access it wherever we want in the class and use it in other methods. So we take whatever the current height is and assign it whatever the current height is again plus 0.2. And another way to write this same exact thing is just plus equals, like Kate mentioned earlier with minus equals. So this just takes the current value of height and adds on to it 0.2. And remember, the return type for this method is void, because we're not returning anything. We're just changing the value of our height variable.
So I was always short, and I always wanted to become taller, and my friends always told me that drinking milk would make me grow taller. I don't know. I didn't really believe it.
Did that work out for you, Kate?
It didn't, but maybe it'll work out for some people. Maybe it'll work out for our person.
Yeah, I think we should at least give it a shot. So what do you think? Should we write a method for drinking milk?
Yeah, that sounds tasty.
Okay, so let's write a method where our person drinks some milk. So we're going to declare the visibility as public, and we're not returning anything. We're just drinking milk, so we're going to say return type is void. Name the method drink milk, and no parameters for now. So let's say that when you drink milk, you grow some. So your height, when you drink milk, your height also goes up by 0.2.
Wait, Hank, didn't you just write a method that does that exact same thing?
Yeah, but we weren't drinking milk then.
Why don't you just call that method instead of rewriting it?
Oh, that's true. The point of methods is so that you don't have to rewrite the same block of code over and over, isn't it? But we're inside the person class. We haven't made a new instance of our person class anywhere in here. So I can't say hank.grow or kate.grow because we're inside the class. We want this to happen no matter what instance we're talking about.
Well, that's why we use the this keyword.
Ah, that's right. So the this keyword functions like an instance of the class that we're currently in. So see, it turns purple here, and that means that it's like a special keyword recognized by Java. And so that's how you can call methods that are inside the same class. So when it sees this, the person class will say, hey, me, grow. So we know that my height starts out at 5.9 feet tall. So what if after we print out my height, let's call hank.grow. And then I should grow some, right? So then we can print. We see that instead of being 5.9 feet, now I'm 6.1 feet. I wish I were really 6'1".
That would be awesome.
Cool. And we can do the same thing with hank.drinkmilk, because hank.drinkmilk calls the grow method in the person class. So now I start out at 5.9 feet tall, then I grow to 6.1 feet tall, and then I drink some milk, which means I grow to 6.3 feet. Great. Now, what if we want the amount that we grow to depend on the number of glasses that we drink? So now our method, instead of just doing something, is a method that takes in some kind of input and does something with that value. And in programming, we call input that a method takes parameters. And we define those parameters here within these parentheses. So for a parameter, you first define the type and then you give it a name. So for number of glasses of milk, that's an integer. So we're going to say int, and let's name it glasses for the number of glasses. Cool. And now in order to use this, I'm going to have to add a parameter to the grow method as well, because now we want to be able to grow different amounts. So for grow, let's add a parameter that's of type int and name it amount. So now whenever we call the grow method, we're going to specify how much we want to grow. And then we'll increase the height to 0.2 times whatever value is passed in as the amount. So why is this red? And it's red because the method grow with a parameter of type int, so it doesn't know what's going on, because we've promised here whenever we call the method grow, we have to give it an int that's the amount we want to grow. So since we want the drink milk method to make our person grow depending on the number of glasses that we drink, we can put the variable glasses here. We're passing around some different variables here. Whenever we call drink milk, we'll give it an integer that represents the number of glasses we're drinking. Then we'll call this.grow and pass in the number of glasses into this parameter that's the amount that we want to grow. And then inside the body of the grow method, we increase our height instance variable by 0.2 times whatever was passed in as the amount, which was the number of glasses that we drink here. So now back in our class demo package, you can see drink milk and grow here are underlined because we didn't specify any amount. So let's just grow 1 unit here. The first time I grow, let's just grow 1. And then when we drink milk, how many glasses of milk should I drink, Kate?
Let's say 3.
3 whole glasses of milk. So now when we run this, first I start out at 5.9 feet tall, and then I grow 1, and so that adds 0.2, and so I grow to 6.1 just like before, but now I drink 3 whole glasses of milk, which increases my height by 0.2 times 3, which brings us to 6'7". I'm totally 6'7" in real life.
So, Hank, is everything that's in between parentheses parameters?
No. Here, 1 and 3 are arguments, and it's easy to get the terms arguments and parameters mixed up. But whenever you pass in a value, when you're calling a method, that's an argument, and it's an argument to the parameters in the method declaration. So whenever we declare a method, we say this is what the drink milk method does, and whenever we call it, I promise, whenever we call it, you must pass in an integer that represents the number of glasses. This here is a parameter. But then when we actually put in a value when we're calling it, that's an argument. So you can think of arguments as being the actual values that passed in. So we pass in the actual value 1 and 3 here because argument starts with A and so does actual.
So now you have this class called person, and if you have time and are excited about these people that you can make,
I'm excited about it.
I'm pretty excited too. You can go ahead and keep adding to it, add more instance variables, do more things with the instance variables, have a good time, eat pizza, whatever you want.
Maybe add an eat pizza method.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Either way, we are uploading this file to the bottom part of this YouTube link, so you can go ahead and download it and keep editing if you want, or if you just want to reference what we did to look back at it.
Great, sounds good. See you in the next video, Kate.
See you later, Hank.